Good afternoon and welcome to the Tibet Museum Tibet Awareness Talk Series. So this program is mainly to raise awareness about Tibet and its present situation by inviting researchers, scholars and other experts. So today we have here with us Ms. Tenzin Lhamo, the Executive Director of Active Nonviolence Education Center. And before our speaker starts her presentation, I would like to introduce her briefly. Ms. Tenzin Lhamo was born and brought up in Arunachal Pradesh. She did her schooling from Tibetan schools in Himachal Pradesh, and for higher studies or college she went to Gujarat, where she completed her master's degree in English literature from Maharaja Saiji Rao University, and later she did her diploma in cooperative management from Bangalore. And about her work experience, she was the executive member of Student Union during her college days. She has worked as Chief Executive Officer at Multipurpose Tibetan Cooperative Society, Norkaling Settlement in Maharashtra. And currently she is working as Executive Director of Active Nonviolence Education Center based in Dharamshala. So now I request Ms. Tenzin Lhamo to start her presentation on towards the Nonviolent Society. So please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tenzin Lhamo. I'm the Executive Director of Active Nonviolence Education Center. I would like to thank Ishila and the entire team of Tibet Museum for inviting me and giving me this platform. I'm a Tibetan born and brought up in exile in India with a status labeled on me as refugee. Since from my childhood I've been listening to the stories of my parents' life back in Tibet. So I think it won't be wrong to say that I know what Tibet looks like, at least in my imagination. My parents did tell me under what hardship they had to go through while escaping from Tibet under the very nose of Chinese armies. I feel fortunate enough that I don't have to go through the similar hardship as my parents. But I always felt I have no identity because I don't have a country to call my own. My parents are Tibetans, their rituals are Tibetan, but my habits are that of Indian, so I was torn between the two identities. Fortunately, while growing up, I had the privilege of listening to the teachings of His Holiness the Dalai Lama about how to become a good human. And of course, my parents, my teachers, my elders, been telling me always to become a good human, to have love. While getting educated in school and especially at university, the feeling of humanity developed gradually inside of me, because there I got the opportunity of meeting different kind of people other than Tibetans. And while interacting with them, I realized we share the same bonding. We are no different. We are all human. With time, I realized that I belong to humanity first. We are all born as human. We are introduced to gender, caste, creed and culture at a later part of our life. For the last 2 years, I've been working with an NGO called Active Nonviolence Education Center. We've been educating people on nonviolence principles and practicalities. We've been promoting the message of love, peace, humility, reconciliation, and humanity as a whole. I feel fortunate to have a job which is my passion and something that I believe in. Ladies and gentlemen, the topic I'm going to talk today is nothing new, but something that needs to be given a thought time and again. I'm going to speak only for a few minutes, and then I want to have an interaction session where we can share our thoughts, and we are thinking on how to become a good human and how to make this society a non-violent society. Towards a non-violent society. Society is made up of people like us. Individual doesn't matter. I have seen and heard people saying, what I as a single person can do and make a difference. I was also one of them, until I came across a quote which says, by His Holiness Dalai Lama. He says, if you think you are too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito. That shook me from the inside, and then I felt, if a mosquito can create such a difference, I, being a human, can make a lot of difference. That is something which changed my perspective. I'm sure you might have heard this quote by His Holiness Dalai Lama. So to create a non-violent society, each individual has to become non-violent. And to become non-violent, we must know what non-violence is. Different people have different perspective about what non-violence is. If I may ask, what's your perception about non-violence? What do you think non-violence is? Anyone? Non-violence is something that everybody knows. It's a subject that everybody has a definition, or at least have heard and known. May I know what you think about non-violence?
Being peaceable and not violent.
Not violent, yeah. And again, what's violent? Anyone?
It's an aggression, isn't it? Not being aggressive towards.
Not being aggressive. Yeah, that is also one of the definitions, and the definition you have given, that is also right. So, different people have different perspective on non-violence. It has multiple definitions. Non-violence is compassion in action. It is a personal commitment and a style of life. Non-violence is fighting for our rights, opposing the injustice, but without doing harm. It is both physical action and mental attitude. You know what is the beauty of non-violence? There is no such thing called defeat in non-violence. Either you learn or you win. When I say win, it's winning the heart of the other person, leaving no hatred behind. How beautiful is that? This is something that everybody wants, but still we, take the path of violence time and again. Being a human, anger is part and parcel of our life. We can't do anything. If we can't say, I don't want to be angry anymore. We can say, I don't want to be angry anymore, but that is not possible. So, non-violence is about we rather than I. It's about growing together, coming together, thinking about every being, not about yourself. It's a means of building a global community committed to the well-being of all. Non-violence is about differentiating the behavior and the person doing it. As Mahatma Gandhi says, hate the sin, not the sinner. So it's the sin which we should hate, not the person doing the sin. Because the person is pure. It's the person's action that is wrong, that is sin, that is harming the other person, not the person himself or herself. Allow me to quote some of the world's renowned non-violent personalities here. Martin Luther King Jr. says, non-violence means avoiding not only external physical violence, but also internal violence of spirit. You not only refuse to shoot a man, but you refuse to hate him. Mother Teresa says, we don't need guns and bombs to bring peace. We need love and compassion. His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, the ultimate way to solve human problem is through non-violence. So altogether, non-violence talks about humanity. The race where you, me, and we all belong to. When we talk about human race, we become one. Although we look a little bit different from each other, our hair colors are different, our complexion are different, we look a little different, we talk different, but we are all human first, is it not? And also we live in a world which is interdependent. Where all kind of people live. Look at those faces smiling. When we see people smiling, we feel happy. We don't want to see anyone crying. Even if the other person we don't, even if the other person is stranger to us, if we see a person suffering, if we see a person crying, we don't like it. Why? Because we have that compassion inside of us. We just need to look inside and know what is filled inside of us. There is no hatred at all. As a human, what we all want, we need fresh air to breathe. Our basic necessities are also same. We need food, clothes, and shelter. I'm not talking about the luxury things here. The other things, the gadgets and other things are luxuries, but I'm talking about the very basic needs. Nobody can survive without food, without clothes, without shelter. Everybody want and wish to have happiness, no misery. Is there anyone who wants misery in his or her life? No one, right? Everybody wants to be happy. Everybody wants to laugh. Nobody wants to cry. And as a human, everybody wants to have freedom. And freedom should be our birthright, right? When I was trying to find the images in Google about freedom, I found these two the most appealing to me. Because there are so many people in this world who are so blessed to be shackled only by his or her thought. We think we don't have freedom, we don't have freedom. Everybody's shouting, I don't have freedom, we don't have freedom. But many people are blessed enough to have the key in or her or his own hand. He or she just need to, free him or herself. But in this world, there are so many people who are not blessed, who are not privileged enough to have this freedom. Freedom of expression, freedom of religion. What is happening in Gaza, Israel, what is happening in Palestine, Syria, it's very, very heartbreaking. Nobody feels happy or nobody feels okay to listen to and watch these things happening. And that is happening in this world. And what communist Chinese are doing back in Tibet with Tibetans are also wrong. As a human, it's wrong. It's painful. This morning I was watching the news and all I see is rape cases at different parts of states in India. Girls being raped and killed and cut into pieces. I've seen a Dalit boy beaten to death this morning in the news. And this morning again in one of the Indian news, which is called NDTV, I read a news which says Tibetans don't have freedom to religion in schools. It was forever, but again, in the news, when you encounter this kind of news, it's very, very painful. But again, I cannot go to Tibet and correct the things. But what I can do as a human, what injustice happening around me, around us, we can at least change it. We can take a step, at least raise our voice to say, no, this is wrong. So I think as a human, we all have a responsibility towards this country, towards this society, and towards yourself to say no to unjust and act. Why do we need to cause harm and make somebody else's life hell? Because we don't know when we're going to die. Why we have to harm others? And it's painful to see a human causing those pain to another human. We all know, we all want love, peace, we want to live peaceful, we want love, we want care. And the other person is also human, so the other person will want the same thing as what you want. I'm not saying people sitting in this room are doing harmful things. I'm not saying that. But what is happening around the world, around you, if you, turn deaf ear or blind to these situations, then I think it is wrong. We have to act. We have to do something to make it correct. I have few examples. There's a person called Amchok Philchung. He was released on 2nd of February. He was detained on 3rd of August 2012, and he was sentenced to 4 years and 5 months. And his charges and accusation was only that he sang song in praise of Dalai Lama and other exiled Tibetan leaders. A person being imprisoned just because he sang a song in praise of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Think about it. He been in prison for 4 years and 5 months, which is insane. There's another guy called Gomar Chempil. He's a monk, 48. He was released on 2nd week of July. He was detained on 10 July 2015. He was sentenced for 2 years in prison only because he possessed a photograph of Dalai Lama. Think about it. Is it not wrong as a human? Is it not wrong as for the humanity? And there's another guy called Gyaltsang Yamphil. He's 41. He was released on 10th of July 2017, detained on 2013. He was put in jail for 4 years just for singing a song for unity and pride among Tibetans. How could this be considered as crime? This is insane. There are so many prisoners out there. While we are talking here, sitting here, there are so many people who are dying, so many people who are being tortured. And there are so many prisoners back in Tibet. We don't know about them. There are so many people who went missing. We don't have record. They are also human. They breathe the same breath as we do. They feel the same pain as we do. If our flesh will cut, the color of blood will be the same for them, for us, for every human. There's another guy, Yönten, monk, 37. He was released on 31st of January 2017. He was detained on 20 July 2013. He was sentenced to 3 years and 6 months in prison just because he witnessed a self-immolation of a guy called Kunchok Sonam. Fortunately, he is believed to be in sound health now. There are so many prisoners, so I have a list of only 4 as of now. So this is what is happening in Tibet. When I think about it, as a human, I feel this is wrong. As a Tibetan, I feel this is wrong. My appeal to all of you is please say no to unjust happening around you. What is happening in Tibet, what is happening in Israel, what is happening in Syria, are the big scenarios. But what is happening around you, don't go deaf and blind to the situations happening around you. Say no, at least act. Because what is happening in Tibet, what is happening people of Israel can happen to us. We don't have to wait until it happens with you. We can act as a human. Think about, see inside of you. All you will feel is love. It's the situation and the scenario which changes us to, take a step that is not pleasant. It is wrong, but making mistake is not a crime. If you do the mistake again and again, that is wrong. All the unjust happening around does question the very humanity in us. ladies and gentlemen, this is the only I want to say, and I want to thank you for coming and sitting and listening to me, and then I want to raise a question here, and how can we as an individual can contribute in creating a non-violent society? I was expecting to have a discussion on this, because talking too much will be boring. So I thought I'll talk a little, and then we'll have discussion and try to see, in each other, what is the common in us, and how we as an individual can change the society we live in. To change the society, we have to change ourselves, or remake or reshape. How about discussion on this? How can we as an individual can contribute in creating a non-violent society?
With education on what non-violence is, and either with children or adults or people from other cultures, just sharing that knowledge.
Thank you. Yeah, education is necessary. Yes.
I think we need to concentrate on the sameness, the commonality we have as people rather than the differences, and I think everything in our environment actually is constantly pointing out differences as opposed to samenesses. Similarities. Yes, thank you. Samenesses.
Differences. Look into the similarities rather than differences is what you're saying. Yes, that's true. And the basic similarity is we are all human. So we should educate people on humanity. Because if
But how do you educate the Chinese government? How do you educate these world leaders? How do you educate someone like Donald Trump? How do you educate these people? Because I think, like we always say, the answer to everything is education. I think we have this knowledge. I think across the world, if we took a worldwide vote on who wants freedom and who wants this, I really think there would be a resounding positive answer that people want all these things. We have this knowledge now, but the power is not in all of our hands individually. We have seen what happens with protest. We can say, yes, we must protest. You protest, someone shoots you. If you're a black person in America and you don't put your hands up immediately, you are killed. This is, how does a person overcome such a huge barrier as this? How? I feel helpless in all of this. I observe as I travel the injustices everywhere, and they're extreme and they're everywhere. But how does, I understand, yes, but I'm not a mosquito, I haven't got a sting. I can't quietly go to all the generals and cover them in spots at night. How does a person do this? I'm well aware of it, but that still doesn't change anything. I share articles, I talk to people, but still, thousands of people are being dispossessed and killed and incarcerated and tortured and treated badly every day.
And we talk to our governments as well. I don't know where it's going, because see, all these are quite really perplexing questions, because as an individual you tend to feel that you've got no power when it comes to global issues. On a level which is just as human beings we can get on, and if we see injustices, say, hey, that's not okay, and if I see someone beating someone up on the street, whoa, stop. But how does that transpire into actually stopping someone like the Chinese government? How?
Whatever you said, I agree on that. But I think the non-violent government organization, non-governmental organization I'm working for, what we do is we educate people, and we target the school children first, and then the masses, and the leaders, and the monks and nuns, and of course Tibetans and non-Tibetan as well. what we think, non-violence is about patience, right? When I say patience, it's not like, you know, waiting to have a result. It's not about that. It's about acting, and then at the same time having the patience. You know, the results. If you it's like you. It takes time. It takes time, but this is the only ultimate path, I think.
Yes.
The non-violence is because, you know, when you start doing violent thing, then, you know, some people have to die, you know, have to lose their life, and we can't say, oh, this is wrong, and I don't want him to die and he can come back to life. It's not possible. When, you know, we cannot make that person alive. So we must think for a broader level, what's going to happen if we take the non-violent way, and what's going to happen if we take the violent way, and then wait, you know, wait, and then see which is more heavier. When you say about the world leaders and all, I have no answer for that, truly. But I think we don't have to, you know, it's not about giving up, giving hope, you know, giving up on hope. What we can do is, we can think about the generation which are coming up. Make them non-violent, make them, you know, give them the education of humanity. Make them, you know, have them a vision, so that they will be inspired by this, you know, what we call humanity, about the similarities rather than the differences. If nothing happens at this point of time, at this generation, but the coming generation, there will be change.
But there's coming generations coming up in China. We were just recently in Tibet, and the thing that got me more than anything else was when we were in Lhasa, seeing all the people doing their Torah, and the majority of them were old people, and seeing all these riot police with shields and all padded up with batons, tasers, pepper spray, all just marching through them. These people are being grown up in China, where there's violence being taught to them, and there's more of them than there are of the rest of us. So we've got to elicit some sort of change. There's plenty of people that I know of in what I consider free societies that are non-violent and preaching non-violence. But you've got to let the people know where the majority of the people are that are growing up in these violent societies, like China. We've got to do something about changing their view as well, as opposed to just doing what we're doing here around each individual person and growing up our next generation, because they're growing up a generation of violent people.
What do you think is the solution?
I have no answers to it. That's why I came here today. I thought this was, when I heard what you were discussing, I thought to myself, this is an extremely interesting topic, because only I've ever heard people talking about bringing up the next generation, like you're talking about, but nobody has actually given any concrete methods on actually dealing with it.
Well, I think that is the only answer. And I think by sharing your thoughts, and sometimes if you can step into a situation where there's discussion and do it in a very respectful and calm manner, because sometimes, you know, it can get a bit out of hand when there's opposing views, and just present thoughts to people. I mean, protests in the free world, we can organise protests in the free world, which may bring awareness to people to think a little more. We are becoming far more global as travellers. There is a whole generation now of young Chinese who travel that there wasn't 30 years, 40 years ago. The same in India. There's a lot of young Indian people that travel now that didn't. And I think just by discussing things, we have to retain hope, because otherwise we'll just go, let's just give up now. But I think all we can do is just talk and be what we want to see. That's all we can do, is we have to act how, in our world, how we want our world to be. You know, if we go around screaming and yelling about, hey, we all need to be non-violent, oi, 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 then there's no difference. So I guess we have to be the example that we want others to lead. That's our only hope, is that that may lead somebody else to thinking about something different. I don't know how we tackle the governments, because democracy seems to have denigrated into being a bit of a farce as well. That democracy isn't even working in supposed democratic countries anymore.
Yeah, but I think discussion and talking is really, really important, because by doing that, we have seen people, you know, we do film screenings, so there are so many people, non-Tibetan especially, so they don't know what is exactly happening in Tibet. So for them, this is something new, and they come across, you know, oh, this is what is happening in Tibet, so this is what Tibet is all about. And then they are like, we want to help. And then they ask, you know, how can we help? So what we tell them is to, you know, create the awareness. If he or she creates the awareness, first we have to talk, sit together, have the discussion, to at least know what is happening, and then educating oneself. As a Tibetan, I feel I have to educate myself about what is the history of Tibet, you know, and what is happening in Tibet, and how can, you know, we resolve the problem. First, if I don't know the basic things, how can I act? That is another question. So
People
first,
have to know what's
yes,
going on.
people have to know what is going on, and after that we can act. Because without knowing, going there, it will be like jumping into a river, not knowing how to swim.
Yes.
So that's what I feel. Whenever we do this kind of talk session, film screening and all, my expectation is not that, you know, the next moment something going to happen and we're going to go back to Tibet. That is not my hope. My only hope is to create the awareness, make more people know about Tibet and the real situation of Tibet. And then those people sitting here, you might be from different parts of the world, you will go back, you will at least talk to at least one person. That, hey, I went to India was incredible, and I don't have, you know, what blah blah blah. And then you can say that we end up to a talk session, and there was a, you know, they've been talking about Tibet, so do you know about Tibet? And that's how the awareness goes on and on, yes, and it spreads. And when I talk about humanity, I truly believe that everybody has that love inside of, you know, inside, like I have. And I'm a human, and other human will be the same, right? There will be no much difference. We look different, but from the inside we are same. We all need peace. We all need love. We all are, you know, when we were born, we were raised with love and care of our mother. And when we, you know, before we die, you depend on somebody else. So it's only love and care that we depend on. And I truly believe that people will think about this. People will feel this and they will support. I'm not only talking about Tibetans back in Tibet, all the people who are suffering. The situation of Israel, the situation of Syria, those are very severe. Everybody is human. When we feel pain, they will also feel pain. So that's what I'm talking about. Is there anyone who would like to talk or share your experience? Yeah.
I think also beyond just raising awareness, I think that's important, but there's also the component of misinformation. Like at least I've talked to people from China, and it seems that they're not really aware, like they get taught a different version of history that's not exactly correct.
That's true.
And so I think that raising awareness is almost like competing with misawareness. And I think that you also sort of need to develop a larger strategy that looks at the processes of the oppression and the systematic control over Tibet, and find a way to use that process to your advantage in a way. But sort of developing a comprehensive strategy instead of, I mean, I think awareness is important, but I think maybe having a strategy is also...
Yes, that's true. That's why we've been teaching, you know, people about 198 method, non-violent tactics by Dr. Jin Sharp. So because, you know, people are not aware of all those strategies. That's the reason what we do is hunger strike and peace march, and there are only few tactics we use because we are not aware of. So once we know what are the tactics are, then only we will be able to implement that. I know China is great, it's a big country, but we don't have to lose hope. I'm not going to lose hope at least. It's like, what is wrong, is it not? And when Martin Luther King Jr. says, I have a dream, people thought it's not going to happen, it's just a dream.
Yeah.
But it happened. It's a belief. When you believe something, I think you can make it happen too. That's my belief. Anyone?
Mind you, Gandhi did have a strategy in hand, didn't he? Of dealing with the British in India. I think you
You have a point,
have
yes.
a point on actually creating a
Yes.
strategy. Definitely.
And I want you to help us, tell us what we should do. When I say discussion, it's about sharing, what I know, and then learning from you as well. And then have a thought on that. What you think we should do more.
I think more will happen as the generations get older, the education's changing, people become more informed because of the internet, and I know China sheltered themselves a bit from that, but the majority of the world, I think, is growing more aware, growing more liberal, and yeah, can only hope, really.
I'm not sure about too liberal at the moment.
I-
The majority of Europe's going more over to the right wing, isn't it, really? It's a very
Yeah,
dangerous
but
time.
this is the generation above, right? My generation is coming, and my perspective, what I see from the people I meet, are incredibly liberal and understanding and wanting things to be different. And
I certainly think we need to lobby our governments over issues that are happening around the globe at the moment. I can't think of much more else to do except for lobbying and talking to people and educating people. Yeah.
That's why Tibet Museum have all those pictures behind you see, those are real, and some of the pictures are just, before coming here, I was looking into, and it shows that some of the pictures are before, 1949, which clearly shows that Tibet is a country.
Oh, yes.
It's not a part of China. Anyone else want to share something? You said you teach non-violence.
I said I try to lead a non-violent life.
Oh,
I
I see.
try to.
Okay. I thought you said you teach
No,
non-violence.
I don't teach them.
I become so excited
Well,
when I
in
heard somebody
a
say,
way, anyone that tries to live their life in a non-violent way is teaching a non-violent lifestyle. But there are times when I felt extremely cheesed off, really angry when I was in Lhasa as well. Just at the treatment of the Tibetan people over there, it was intimidating to see so many military police people dotted around the place, making you stick your bags through, checking your papers every time you were trying to walk anywhere. It was quite hideous.
I have never been to Tibet. I really wish to go and see the real situation happening. But it's very difficult for us. And it's,
Oh, we don't get to see the real situation.
No,
Yeah, yeah.
No, we do not.
We're there.
It's all
We were. It
hidden.
was very controlled where we
Yes.
could go and where we could not go.
Yes.
And yes, it was an experience, once in a lifetime experience, and I am very grateful for the privilege that I had, that I could get plane ticket and
Get
get
out.
out.
And it got,
You know, when I wanted to, and that was the heartbreak for me, was seeing people that this is their daily life, and we're just seeing this from the outside, and it's painful. How painful it must be to have your whole culture and ripped away from you and stolen from you. It must be heinous, beyond belief for me, because I have never been in such a situation. And I think that's why the greatest power lies with those of us who have that privilege. Because I don't know what would have happened. I was very, very tempted, and I would have loved to have scattered photos of the Dalai Lama everywhere as I walked, like confetti, just as a protest, but
People are put in jail just to have the portrait or the photograph of His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
and in fact, I actually got into trouble with the police while I was in Lhasa.
because
Because I'm a juggler, so I was juggling for some children, and then some other Tibetans came up and started to watch and clapping and smiling, and then all of a sudden the police turned up. No. So we moved away, and we moved a bit further away, and we juggled for some other people. The police came up again, and so the third time we decided not to. We had a plainclothes policeman follow us back to our hotel, and every shop we went into, he would wait outside on his radio, just for juggling. I think that.
well, I don't think it was the juggling
It was-
he was
it was-
upset about. I think what they were upset about
It
was
was
the
a
fact that
group.
there was more than four
There was
people
more than
standing
4
in front
people
of us.
standing
and
in
it was,
a group.
you know,
And with the help of people outside Tibet and non-Tibetans, there was a guy called Tunduvangchen. He is, he made a documentary movie before the Olympic in
Yes,
2008.
sure,
He
yes,
was
yes.
imprisoned, and he was put in jail. And because of the support outside Tibet, they have to release him. Now he is free, and he's in America.
Oh, that's great, because we
Yes.
didn't know at the
So-
end of that movie what the result was, whether he was still in
Yes.
prison or not, so that's
No.
excellent that he's been freed.
Yes, he's been freed, and he's in America with his family. So that is one of the results you can see. By your help, what can happen? Not every political prisoners, but there are some people who are out because of the pressure put on, communist Chinese. And even if one person is out, it feels immense,
Yes,
pleasure to see that.
So,
Not
one
to-
more crack in the wall.
Because you see the list of people and the charges brought against them,
Yes.
and how long they've been in
Yes.
jail, and you go, really?
See,
It's been
Really?
beyond belief.
it's
Really?
insane.
It is.
Even to think about. And all the Tibetans, especially our elders generation, they inspire me so much, because after having so much repression, after having so much hardship, they still, believe in non-violence, and they still want us to pursue the, path of non-violence, not to go violent.
I think too
Which is-
that non-violence is beyond not being violent,
Yes.
and I think it's beyond basic compassion. I think it's also thinking about, as a Western person, our consumerism and the way we address our consumerism, because a lot of the power is all money driven, and it's all economically driven. And the power that we do have, and I am surprised as to how many shops here in Mahatganj and Dharamsala and Bagsu are selling things made in China, made in China, made in China. This is something that we can do that people find very difficult, and I try to do it, and it's very challenging to actually live your life not buying anything that's made in China.
Yes.
But that's another thing that we can educate about, because the power that we do have is our spending power and our withdrawal of spending power, and we really laboured over the decision as to whether to go to Tibet. We've been long time supporters of Tibet and the cause as to whether we should go, and it was only because I read an article where the Dalai Lama said go, see, and then come back and tell people, because if you don't go and see, you can't spread the word with any authority.
Yes. Yes.
So that sort of tipped our decision to go, but we made sure that we dealt with Tibetan tour operators, and we tried to minimise any connection that we had control of. So we as Westerners can do that. We can do that by removing you know, that's another action of non-violence is
Yes,
by not
non-cooperation.
supporting any economy. Mind you, that's pretty difficult to study every country in the world has human rights issues. But, you know, by buying local, by supporting our local economies.
That's what Gandhi did as well, wasn't it, with the cloth?
Well, that was the
Yes,
whole
team
underpinning of his
And
strategy.
the man went to England as well to apologise to the factory workers, because I can remember my grandmother telling me about it. Gandhi arrived, and she was a little girl at the time, and apologised to all the workers
For losing their jobs
for losing
because
their jobs,
of
because he was no
telling
longer-
people to buy local. So that was a really a wonderful action of compassion, because it's not just not acting in a violent way, it's looking at how you're about to act and what your actions are going to do and how that impacts, because everything we do impacts everybody else. It does, you know, it's like a concept about rubbish. Oh, we'll recycle it, we'll do this, throw it away. There is no such thing as throwing it away. We're on a ball like this, we just move it from A to B. So everything we do impacts everything else. So yeah, I think perhaps it could be considered a non-violent action to try and use your purchasing power with ethics as well.
It's part of education, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Last time we were doing a film screening, and there was one person from, I think maybe Germany, if I'm not wrong, and that person says, I want to help you, but you know, to have a non-cooperation with China, it's very, very difficult because they are everywhere, which is also true. But then he said, I'll try my best to, you know, non-cooperate with them. That's what he said. So that reminds me of the time, you know, we were doing the film screening last time.
Yeah.
And I'm also hopeful because, you know, I have never been to Tibet. You know, I always take my example when I, you know, think about what is happening because I know myself the best, right? So I was born in exile. I have never seen Tibet, but my parents have been telling me about, you know, what Tibet looks like and how the lives back in Tibet are, what are the food they used to eat, what are the clothes they used to wear, and you know, what are the lives they have. Most of them are nomads. And then people who are, you know, all those people sitting here, I think most of them are born in exile. But still we have that, you know, feeling inside of us, I'm a Tibetan, I do something for my country, you know, that feeling is so alive in us. So I think that itself is an achievement. If I see from the, you know, positive side, I'm not saying that we just have to sit and do nothing, but we have that feeling inside of us, and you know, that to do something for the Tibet. So I think which is good.
Very
And
good.
then, yes, and then we have to carry forward and teach our children about, you know, what Tibet is, keeping the, you know, everything alive.
You must keep your
Yes,
language. Your language is the most important
culture,
thing. The quickest
everything
way
alive.
to kill a culture is to take away the language.
Yes.
It's being done as a practice by oppressors for thousands of years. If you
Though
look
our
back into
languages
history.
are kind of mixed with you know, Hindi and English, but again we practice it more and more and try to talk in Tibetan more and write in Tibetan more. So that's the responsibility we were given since our birth, which we have to carry on by not giving up the hope and doing what is in, you know, your hand. Like I work in an NGO teaching people, educating people about non-violence, and at the same time telling people about what, you know, what is happening in Tibet and what I as a Tibetan feel as a Tibetan. And people working in Tibet Museum are, you know, keeping those history alive, and other organizations and our offices and individual as well. So they've been telling people, making friends and creating awareness. So I think together, you know, doing individually but united, we can create change, make a difference.
Any more questions?
I have a small video clip, but there's no, you know, I have to see this. Yore.
Until light comes, I want to share some I'm also actually, I'm from Tibet. I was born in Tibet and I was educated here. And I just want to add some like maybe point of views. I'm originally from Tibet. I was born in Tibet, and these days we have the problem of complacency. You know, in 80s and 90s, we had a very like great support from Western world. You know, there are many like famous people like singers who believe in this the message of freedom and all liberty. They kind of support us. So through that movement, there are many Westerners who follow that trend, you know, and it's become a kind of like a culture around that time. And after that, then there are so many events happening, mostly violent happening in Syria or Palestine or everywhere. So people's attention is more towards the violence, you know. And on the other hand, our struggle has been going on since like being exiled from '59 till now. It's been going on, but the shift in the attention and the complacency in the bystanders in like the West or in other part of Asia. So that's why educating people about the creating awareness about non-violence is kind of it has to be more like sporadic and more stronger, and more strategically, like getting people to know about this, because these days people are more concerned about Syria and all these things. I'm also concerned. On my Facebook, I have since 2 years I put a image of that child, that child lying on the seashore. I've been putting that for 2 years, almost 2-3 years, and I'm most concerned about that. But people should know that, like when there's a violent escalation, so if your attention is only concerned about the violent things and not really talking about that other thing, then it might give a wrong message to the perpetrators of these violence. You might get the wrong message. So that's why they keep doing that things, right?
Yes.
So that's why, and that is one thing. That's my point of view. And another point of view is that why China? China is important. Chinese political status and these leadership things going on in China. Why it's important to all the people around the world who believe in the liberal thought and freedom and all this humanity? Because China now, it has been believing that China will, so as the economy grows and the economy get bigger, they might get transit into that democratic system right? But now it's going downward, right? Now he's changing the terms and all these things, and many of the many other, people might misunderstood in a different way that China is in their political stance they are doing totalitarian, but on the other hand they are economically liberal country and they are doing pretty well, because they economically speaking, the middle class is the largest in the world, now,
Yes.
so it's getting bigger, so people might get that kind of wrong notion, about, okay, that might be a good example of, how to govern a nation, to have the kind of totalitarian politically and then economically liberalization. So we have to really think, because that is happening in America right now, right? Trump is doing that somehow, so that's why what is happening in China right now is like it's like important to like the citizens of the world has to be really alert about that, because that might be influenced in a very bad way and affects us in 10, 20, 50 years. It will affect us directly, I think. I'm like in the free world right now, it might give the wrong message. That's why all the message of non-violence, humanity, freedom, it's like world is like an apple, the one part of apple is rooted right now. And if we don't care about that for a long time, then whole apple will be rooted right one day. So that's what I feel like.